You didn't block them out of anger. Anger would have meant they still had access to your emotions, that they could still pull a reaction out of you. What you did was quieter, cleaner, and far more permanent. You outgrew them out of clarity. And clarity doesn't slam doors, it simply stops walking down hallways that no longer lead anywhere. There was a time when you tried to understand them, explain yourself, bridge gaps they refused to cross. You mistook effort for progress and patience for love. But clarity arrived the moment you realized growth isn't mutual just because history exists. Some people stay the same while expecting you to keep shrinking to meet them. You didn't wake up furious and decide to erase them. You woke up aware of patterns repeating, aware of how drained you felt after every interaction, aware that your peace kept being negotiated away for familiarity. Awareness doesn't shout, it concludes. Blocking them wasn't punishment, it was protection. Protection of the version of you that finally learned what costs too much. You didn't do it to make a statement. You did it because continuing access no longer made sense. Anger reacts. Clarity responds by choosing distance. You saw that conversations were circular, apologies conditional, change always promised but never practiced. You realized you were doing the emotional labor for everyone in the room. And once you see that, you can't unsee it. Outgrowing someone doesn't mean you think you're better than them. It means you're no longer compatible with who they choose to remain. Growth changes your tolerance, not your ego. You didn't block them to hurt them. You blocked them because staying connected hurt you. That's the part people misunderstand. They think cutting access is cruelty. They don't see the months or years of internal processing that happened before silence. By the time you blocked them, the emotional decision had already been made. Anger would have kept you watching. Clarity allowed you to look forward. You didn't disappear dramatically. You simply stopped explaining yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. You stopped revisiting conversations that never evolved. You stopped offering versions of yourself that weren't respected. Outgrowing them meant accepting that love without alignment becomes a liability. You didn't need closure from them. Clarity gave you all the answers you needed. Their behavior explained everything words never could. Blocking them wasn't emotional. It was logical. You recognized that access is a privilege, not a right. And privileges expire when they're abused. They might think you're cold now, but cold implies numbness. What you are is settled. You didn't leave because you stopped caring. You left because you finally cared enough about yourself. And that's the truth they struggle with the most. You didn't block them in anger. You didn't leave in chaos. You didn't act out of spite. You outgrew them out of clarity. And clarity doesn't look back. You didn't block them because you were overwhelmed with emotion. You blocked them because the emotions finally settled into understanding. When clarity arrives, it doesn't argue, it reorganizes your life. You noticed how every interaction required you to explain yourself again, how your growth made them uncomfortable, how your questions were met with defensiveness instead of curiosity. Clarity doesn't tolerate emotional stagnation. You realized you were evolving while they were recycling the same excuses, same patterns, same apologies, same expectations that you'd stay patient forever. Awareness changed the cost-benefit equation. Blocking them wasn't impulsive. It was the final step after countless internal negotiations where you tried to make it work without losing yourself. You didn't feel rage when you cut contact. You felt relief. Relief is never born from anger, it's born from alignment. You saw how much energy went into managing their reactions, how carefully you chose words, how often you shrank to avoid conflict. Clarity exposed that imbalance. Outgrowing someone feels quiet on the outside and seismic on the inside. It's the moment you accept that staying connected is more damaging than letting go. You didn't need a dramatic ending. You needed a clean one. Clean endings don't bleed. You realized you were being asked to tolerate what you would never allow for your future self. That realization made the decision simple, not easy. Blocking them was a boundary, not a verdict. It wasn't about right or wrong, it was about fit. You stopped confusing familiarity with safety. Familiar pain stopped feeling acceptable once you tasted peace. You noticed how they dismissed your concerns but panicked when you withdrew. That contrast taught you everything. Clarity showed you that access doesn't equal intimacy. Some people are close but never truly present. You didn't hate them. Hate requires energy. You redirected that energy inward. You realized that growth without separation is rare. Distance is often the tuition of evolution. Blocking them wasn't about winning. It was about ending a cycle that kept you stuck. You saw that explanations only prolonged the inevitable. Understanding didn't require agreement. You didn't leave because you felt superior. You left because you felt responsible for your own well-being. Clarity taught you that love without respect becomes obligation. You stopped waiting for them to change because you accepted that wanting change doesn't create it. Blocking them meant choosing silence over self-betrayal. You understood that emotional access is earned through consistency, not history. You realized you were carrying the emotional weight of two people. Letting go was redistribution. You didn't cut them off suddenly. You detached gradually. The block was just the visible part. You noticed how your peace increased the moment communication ended. That was your answer. You stopped negotiating boundaries with people who treated boundaries like threats. Clarity stripped away hope that kept you stuck. You learned that some people only value you when they feel you slipping away. Blocking them wasn't revenge. Revenge looks back. You looked forward. You didn't need them to understand your decision. Understanding was no longer a requirement. You accepted that outgrowing someone doesn't make them bad, it makes the connection obsolete. You realized that staying accessible was delaying your own growth. Blocking them was an act of self-respect, not self-defense. You chose progress over proximity. You didn't erase them out of bitterness. You removed them out of alignment. And the final truth is this: anger burns fast and fades. Clarity settles in and stays. You didn't block them to make a point. You blocked them because your life no longer had space for what you'd already outgrown. You reached a point where conversations felt like rewinding the same scene again and again. Different days, same confusion. Different words, same outcome. Clarity showed you that repetition without progress isn't patience, it's self-neglect. You noticed how much you edited yourself to keep the peace, how often you swallowed thoughts to avoid discomfort. Growth made that silence unbearable. You didn't want harmony that required self-erasure anymore. Blocking them wasn't emotional overload, it was emotional efficiency. You stopped spending energy where nothing evolved. You realized how often you left interactions feeling smaller, heavier, and less yourself. Clarity doesn't ignore patterns, it connects them. You saw that they were attached to who you used to be, not who you were becoming. Staying would have meant freezing yourself in an old version. You didn't leave because things were terrible every day. You left because they were never getting better in the ways that mattered. Outgrowing someone is recognizing that effort no longer leads to improvement, only exhaustion. You became aware of how much emotional labor you were doing alone, explaining, reassuring, translating, holding space. Clarity asked a simple question: who is holding space for you? Blocking them was choosing rest over resilience. You understood that love without growth turns into maintenance. And maintenance drains joy slowly, quietly, relentlessly. You saw that they listened to respond, not to understand. Awareness changes how much you're willing to repeat yourself. You didn't want to keep proving your worth to people who benefited from doubting it. Clarity made you allergic to inconsistency. What you once tolerated began to feel insulting. You realized how often you gave grace without receiving accountability. Grace without balance becomes permission. Blocking them was you stepping out of a role you were never meant to play forever. You stopped mistaking potential for reality. What could be stopped outweighing what was. You learned that emotional closeness means mutual effort, not one person constantly stretching. You didn't need to be right. You needed to be free. Clarity taught you that you don't owe everyone access to your healing journey. You recognized how often they crossed lines and called it misunderstanding. Awareness sharpened your boundaries. Blocking them meant you stopped waiting for change that required someone else to want it. You accepted that some people grow attached to your tolerance, not your presence. You realized peace felt unfamiliar at first because chaos had been normalized. They condemn you because you saw what they hide. You spoke the quiet truths that everyone else was too afraid to name. You looked beyond the smiles, the staged kindness, the carefully curated lies, and you saw them, not their image, not their mask, them, the part they keep buried under performance and pride. And they never forgave you for that. They never hated you for being wrong, they hated you for being right. You didn't play along. You didn't join their theater of falsehoods. While they worshipped appearances, you kept searching for substance. And when you finally pointed out the cracks in their perfection, they didn't fix them, they painted over them, then blamed you for noticing. You became their threat the moment you stopped participating in their illusion. People like that survive on secrecy. They crave validation, not understanding. And when you refused to play your part, the quiet, compliant one who claps for hypocrisy, you became the villain in their script. They condemned you not for your sins, but for your sight. The truth is uncomfortable when you've built your identity on lies. You became their mirror, and mirrors are dangerous things. They show people what they've spent years avoiding. And when they couldn't destroy the reflection, they decided to destroy the mirror. They say you changed, but you didn't. You just stopped pretending not to notice. You stopped laughing at fake jokes, stopped defending people who only showed loyalty when convenient. You began to move differently, and suddenly the masks started slipping. Their discomfort was never about you. It was about exposure. They talk about you now, whispering, dramatizing, rewriting the story, because villains make better conversation than truth tellers. It's easier to condemn you than confront the parts of themselves you revealed. So they built a narrative where you're the problem, because that way, they never have to face what they are. You became their cautionary tale. Don't end up like them, they say. But what they really mean is, don't wake up like them. Because once you see through the act, you can't go back to clapping. You can't unsee the manipulation, the ego disguised as morality, the affection that was always conditional. They mistake your silence for guilt. But it's not guilt, it's grace. You don't need to defend yourself to those who already decided their version of the truth. You learned that arguments with liars only make the lie louder, so you went quiet. And in that quiet, their stories began to crumble. They condemn you because you made them visible. You stripped away their borrowed light. You turned the spotlight back toward the shadows. And people who thrive in darkness despise illumination. They'll call you arrogant, cruel, dramatic, anything but accurate. Because accuracy is fatal to falsehood. And now, you walk alone but free. You no longer seek acceptance from those who wear their morality like makeup. You've seen too much to return to blindness. You learned that solitude is safer than fake company, and truth is heavier, but cleaner than deception. They condemn you because you saw their true colors and refused to paint over them. They still perform, pretending the curtain never fell. But you can see the tremor in their smiles, the hesitation in their eyes. They sense your gaze on them, and it unsettles them, because you know what they look like without the costume. Nothing terrifies pretenders more than someone who remembers the truth. They gather in small circles to reassure each other that you're the problem. Every sentence they speak is a confession disguised as gossip. You don't correct them. You don't need to. The truth doesn't need defenders. It needs time. And time is patient. It always exposes what ego tries to hide. You learn that peace isn't the absence of enemies. It's the absence of masks. Once you've seen people's true faces, you stop expecting sincerity from them. You stop offering explanations to those who hear only what flatters them. You start living quietly, watching their performances with detached amusement. They mistake your detachment for bitterness. But bitterness is loud. Indifference is elegant. You no longer need revenge. You have perspective. You understand now that falsehood collapses under its own weight. All you have to do is step aside and let gravity do its work. You stopped collecting apologies. You realized most are not apologies at all, just people trying to reset access to you. So you built boundaries so high that only truth can climb them. It's lonely up there, yes, but it's honest. And honesty has become your oxygen. They think your quiet is weakness because they mistake noise for strength. But strength is restraint. Power is refusing to waste words on those who twist them. Every time you stay silent, they reveal themselves a little more. You learn that the best interrogation tool is patience. You don't flinch anymore when they accuse you. You let them talk. Let them invent. Lies are like ghosts, they vanish when ignored. And every false story told about you becomes another thread tightening around their own reputation. Their theater is collapsing, and you don't even have to lift a hand. You've grown fluent in solitude. It no longer feels like exile. It feels like clarity. There's peace in being misunderstood by liars, because you no longer need them to understand you. You don't explain honesty to those addicted to illusion. You let them drown in their own narratives. They condemn you because you don't worship their version of truth. But you've learned, truth doesn't need a congregation, only conviction. You carry it quietly now, like a weapon concealed beneath elegance. They sense it, even if they can't name it, the calm of someone who knows too much and speaks too little. And in the end, that's what breaks them. Not your words, not your actions, your awareness. You saw their true colors, and you didn't flinch. You didn't run. You simply stepped back and let the light do what it always does, reveal. And revelation, my dear, is the one thing falsehood can never survive. They think you disappeared. You didn't. You simply stopped performing. You walked off their stage and built your own room of silence where only truth is invited. From there you watch them scramble for an audience, terrified that the applause has died. They still crave validation. You now crave nothing. You've become the still point they can't reach. Every rumor they release returns to them slightly distorted, a mirror echoing their own cruelty. They don't understand how it happens, and that's what eats them alive, the realization that your absence became their reflection. Once you stop reacting, the entire machinery of manipulation collapses. You learned that early. When you refused to defend yourself, their words lost oxygen. They mistook your calm for surrender, but it was strategy. You understood that silence in the right hands is a blade sharper than anger. They missed the version of you that used to justify everything. They missed the angel who kept forgiving their shadows. But the angel grew tired of being the light source for people afraid of dawn. Now you shine differently, cold, deliberate, selective. The warmth they once abused no longer exists for them. You became the reminder they can't escape. Your name surfaces when honesty threatens to surface. They roll their eyes, pretend indifference, but their tone betrays them. You've become proof that authenticity survives exile, and they resent that proof because it nullifies their pretense. You stop trying to change anyone. That's real maturity. Watching someone lie, betray, and repeat the pattern without lifting a finger to save them. You simply observe, detached and calm, knowing that life always demands payment in the currency of truth. They condemn you because you're free. You don't owe them narrative, explanation, or access. Freedom frightens those who live on approval. You learn that detachment isn't loneliness, it's sovereignty. You own your peace the way tyrants own empires, except yours requires no subjects. The stories they tell about you are shrinking. Each time you thrive silently, their versions lose credibility. Lies decay when starved of attention. You don't fight them, you outlast them. Time, after all, is loyal to the truthful. Now they avoid your eyes. Not because you threaten them, but because they see what you see. They feel exposed in your presence, stripped of performance. That's the quiet authority of awareness. It commands without demanding, it unsettles without speaking. And you, once the condemned, now walk through their world untouchable. You don't seek revenge, you embody it. Your existence is the verdict. They condemned you because you saw their true colors, and the tragedy for them is simple. The vision you carry cannot be unseen, and the peace you've earned cannot be taken back. They're shocked because the place they pushed you into was meant to erase you. It wasn't just darkness, it was isolation, doubt, and the quiet hope that you'd disappear without making noise. They assumed the pit would finish what they started. They thought the weight would crush you, that the silence would confuse you, that the lack of support would convince you that you were nothing without them. They mistook abandonment for defeat. They didn't expect you to breathe down there. They didn't expect you to adapt. Darkness feels final only to those who've never had to survive inside it. They're shocked because while they turned away, you were learning how to see without light. You stopped relying on what they provided and started building from what remained. They assumed fear would paralyze you. Instead, it sharpened you. Pain didn't break you, it reorganized you. They thought the pit would be the end of your story. They didn't realize it would become the beginning of your awareness. Down there, stripped of illusion, you saw things clearly for the first time. Who stayed, who vanished, who mattered, who never did. They're shocked because you didn't come out begging. You didn't crawl back asking for rescue. You climbed out on your own terms. You didn't come back loud. You came back different, quieter, heavier, grounded. They expected damage they could point at. What they got was resilience they couldn't explain. They don't understand how the same darkness that was supposed to swallow you became the place where you stopped fearing it. They're shocked because the pit taught you independence. You learned how to survive without applause, validation, or permission. What they intended as punishment became preparation. They wanted you to doubt yourself forever. Instead, you stopped doubting anything that came from them. They expected bitterness. You emerged with clarity. They're shocked because you didn't come out angry, you came out finished. Finished explaining. Finished pleading. Finished needing their approval. The pit forced you to confront yourself without distraction. And you survived that meeting. They don't recognize you now because the version of you they controlled didn't survive the fall. They're shocked because you didn't just escape, you evolved. You learned how strong you were when there was nothing left to lean on. They thought throwing you into darkness made them powerful. They didn't realize power fades when the target survives. You walked out carrying lessons they'll never understand because they've never had to rebuild themselves from nothing. They're shocked because the pit didn't claim you. It forged you, and the truth settles in painfully for them. They tried to bury you, but you learned how to live underground, and when you rose, you weren't the same person anymore. They're shocked because the darkness didn't make you weak, it stripped you, and what remained was something unbreakable. When nothing was left to perform for, you discovered who you really were. They thought isolation would hollow you out. They didn't realize isolation would force you inward, where the real foundation was always waiting. They assumed the pit would make you desperate for rescue. Instead, it taught you self-reliance. You stopped waiting for hands that never reached down. They're shocked because you learned how to sit with yourself in silence and not fall apart. Most people avoid themselves. You faced yourself in the dark and survived. They thought confusion would consume you. Instead, clarity formed. When the noise stopped, truth finally spoke. They expected the darkness to turn you bitter. It made you precise. They're shocked because you stopped needing their approval the moment you realized they abandoned you intentionally. Down there, you learned the difference between allies and spectators. And you stopped calling spectators family. They thought the pit would humble you into obedience. It humbled you into self-respect. They're shocked because you didn't come out seeking revenge. Revenge would have kept you emotionally underground. You came out free. They assumed the fall would damage your confidence. It destroyed illusions instead. They don't understand how you stayed sane without reassurance. They don't know that reassurance becomes unnecessary once you trust your own judgment. They're shocked because you didn't beg the same people who pushed you. You refused to give them the satisfaction of your collapse. In the pit, you learned how to move without witnesses. That skill changed everything. They expected your voice to fade. It deepened. They're shocked because the darkness taught you discipline. You stopped wasting energy on what couldn't be controlled. You learned patience the hard way, not waiting for others, but waiting for the right moment to rise. They don't recognize your calm because it was forged under pressure, not comfort. They thought fear would rule you. Fear taught you awareness. They're shocked because you didn't come out needing explanations. You already understood everything that mattered. You learned how to carry yourself without validation. That's when power became permanent. They assumed the pit would erase your worth. It revealed it. They're shocked because you didn't break down publicly. You rebuilt privately. They expected you to return fragile. You returned fortified. They don't understand how the same people who left you taught you independence by leaving. They thought the darkness would make you doubt your path. It clarified it. They're shocked because you learned how to trust silence more than promises. The pit showed you how little you actually needed to survive and how much you'd been carrying unnecessarily. They expected you to resent the fall. You respected it for what it taught you. They don't realize the pit removed your fear of losing everything you already had. They're shocked because you stopped fearing abandonment once it happened. You learned how to walk forward without looking back because nothing behind you was worth returning to. They assumed the fall would define you. It refined you. They're shocked because you came out with boundaries instead of wounds. You no longer fear darkness, you understand it. They don't recognize your strength because it doesn't announce itself. They thought throwing you away meant the end. It meant the beginning of self-authorship. They're shocked because you didn't seek revenge against the pit. You simply climbed out and kept walking. You didn't come back to prove anything. You came back to live. They don't understand how losing everything gave you clarity instead of despair. They're shocked because the pit didn't destroy you, it trained you. And the final truth settles heavy and unavoidable for them. They threw you into the dark expecting silence, but darkness taught you how to stand alone, how to see without light, how to survive without permission. You didn't just come out alive. You came out untouchable. They're still trying to understand how the same place meant to erase you became the place that educated you. Darkness didn't weaken you, it removed everything false that light once disguised. They thought pain would make you cling to whoever hurt you last. Instead, pain taught you discernment. You stopped confusing familiarity with safety. They're shocked because you learned how to be alone without feeling lonely. Solitude stopped feeling like punishment and started feeling like peace. They expected the pit to shrink your world. It expanded your perspective. You saw life without filters, without roles, without expectations. They don't understand how hunger for survival turned into hunger for purpose. You didn't just want to escape, you wanted to evolve. They assumed fear would make you reckless. It made you deliberate. Every move you make now has intention behind it. They're shocked because you don't flinch at memories anymore. What once haunted you now feels distant, like a lesson already passed. The pit taught you how to separate emotion from decision. You learned that feelings can exist without controlling outcomes. They expected you to come back loud, defensive, reactive. You returned composed, observant, unbothered. They don't understand how being ignored trained you to stop seeking attention. Validation lost its grip on you. They're shocked because you trust yourself now more than anyone else. That trust makes you impossible to manipulate. You learned how to recognize patterns early. What once took years to notice now takes seconds. They thought the darkness would turn you cold in the wrong way. It turned you clear. They don't realize the pit stripped away your fear of disappointment. You already survived it. They're shocked because you stopped explaining your choices. Explanation became unnecessary once clarity arrived. You learned how to walk away without guilt. Survival erased the need to justify self-preservation. They expected trauma to define you. You turned it into training. They don't recognize you because you no longer react the way they expect. Predictability left you down there. They're shocked because you don't chase closure. You created it yourself. The pit taught you how to let silence speak louder than arguments ever could. They assumed you'd return needing reassurance. You returned with certainty. They don't understand how losing control over everything gave you control over yourself. They're shocked because you don't fear falling anymore. You know you can climb. And the final truth settles quietly but permanently. They threw you into darkness thinking it was the end. But darkness taught you survival. Survival taught you mastery. And mastery made sure you will never be pushed again. You didn't destroy something out of anger. You dismantled it out of foresight. What they called loyalty, you recognized as a slow poison that would have seeped into every future version of you. You saw how patterns repeat, how damage disguises itself as tradition, how silence becomes inheritance. So you did the unthinkable. You broke the chain before it learned your children's names. They didn't understand your decision at the time. They thought you were reckless, dramatic, ungrateful. They couldn't see the rot because they were comfortable living inside it. But you weren't built to survive at the cost of your lineage. You chose long-term survival over short-term approval. You sabotaged what would have normalized suffering. You refused to pass down emotional debt disguised as culture. You ended cycles that others were too afraid to even name. That kind of courage doesn't look heroic in the moment. It looks lonely, misunderstood, and dangerous. They mocked you when you walked away. They said you overreacted. They said you'd regret it. They said you were burning bridges that everyone else learned to live with. What they didn't realize was that those bridges led straight into generational collapse. You saw the future clearly. Children growing up in silence. Partners repeating the same damage. Values eroding slowly under the weight of unhealed wounds. You didn't wait for proof, you trusted pattern recognition. And you acted. Sabotage wasn't destruction. It was intervention. You removed yourself from a system designed to extract, diminish, and normalize pain. You didn't let dysfunction become destiny. At first, they called you the villain. That's always how it starts. The one who refuses to comply becomes the threat. The one who says, "This ends with me," becomes the problem. They couldn't control you anymore, so they tried to control the narrative. But time is cruel to lies and loyal to truth. Slowly, they began to see what you saw. The fallout you predicted arrived right on schedule. The damage you warned about unfolded exactly as you described. And suddenly, your overreaction looked like precision. You didn't just save yourself. You altered the trajectory of everything that comes after you. Generations won't carry wounds they never received. Children won't have to unlearn what you refused to teach. Love won't come with conditions you rejected. Peace won't be earned through suffering because you refused to romanticize it. That's when the whispers changed. They stopped calling you dramatic. They started calling you brave. They stopped asking why you left. They started asking how you saw it so early. You became the reference point, the example, the one people quietly compare themselves to when they're standing at the edge of the same decision you already made. You didn't need statues or speeches. Your legacy is invisible but permanent. It lives in calmer homes, healthier bonds, and people who never have to heal from what you prevented. They think you're a legend now because you did what most people are too afraid to do. You chose the future over familiarity. You sacrificed comfort for clarity, belonging for boundaries, approval for protection, and those choices echo louder than applause ever could. They finally understand that sabotage isn't always destruction. Sometimes it's surgery, painful, necessary, life-saving. You cut out what would have killed slowly. They admire you now because you proved that bloodlines don't excuse damage, history doesn't justify harm, and tradition doesn't outrank truth. You didn't inherit strength, you built it by refusing to inherit dysfunction. And the irony is brutal. The same people who resisted your decision now benefit from it. They walk paths you cleared. They enjoy peace you paid for. You don't remind them. Legends never do. You carry the quiet satisfaction of knowing that because of you, something ended permanently. No repetition, no continuation, no silent suffering passed forward. You didn't win an argument. You won a timeline. They speak your name with respect now because you had the courage to be hated first. You were the interruption in a pattern that thought it was eternal. You were the one who said this stops here and meant it. That's why they think you're a legend. Not because you were loud, not because you were perfect, but because you saw the future breaking and broke the cycle before it could. What they didn't realize is that the hardest battles aren't fought in public. They're fought in private moments where walking away feels like death and staying feels familiar. You chose the harder loneliness over inherited destruction. That choice reshaped everything. You lost people when you made that decision. Not because you were wrong, but because endings always expose who benefited from things staying broken. You were willing to be misunderstood if it meant being free. At the time, it looked like self-sabotage. From the outside, it appeared like you threw away security, tradition, or loyalty. Only later did it become clear you were protecting something far more valuable: continuity without corruption. You absorbed the blame so future versions wouldn't have to absorb the damage. That's a debt most people are unwilling to pay. They didn't see the nights you questioned yourself, the moments where doubt crept in and whispered that maybe endurance was easier than change. But endurance without direction is just slow decay, and you refused to rot quietly. You became the pause in a lineage that never stopped running toward the same cliff. You didn't just slow it down, you redirected it entirely. Now they understand that cycles don't break themselves. Someone has to stand up and be the disruption. Someone has to be willing to look like the villain so others don't have to live like victims. You didn't ask for gratitude. You didn't wait for permission. You acted before applause arrived, knowing it might never come. That's why the respect feels heavier now. It wasn't handed to you. It arrived late, carrying regret and clarity with it. They see now that what you dismantled would have demanded silence, compliance, and sacrifice from generations that never agreed to pay that price. You save people who may never fully understand what you saved them from. That's real power, unseen, uncompromised, and permanent. You didn't leave chaos behind. You left space. Space for healthier love. Space for better decisions. Space for futures that don't require recovery. They call you a legend because you didn't wait for things to become unbearable before acting. You trusted your discernment when everyone else trusted denial. You taught them that loyalty without conscience is just participation in harm. You proved that protecting the future sometimes looks like destroying the present. And the truth is, you never wanted to be remembered. You just wanted it to stop. But endings this clean don't disappear. They echo. Every time someone chooses differently because of you, your decision lives again. Every time a pattern fails to repeat, your courage speaks. You didn't break tradition, you corrected it. You didn't abandon legacy, you refined it. And that's how the story closes. Not with applause, not with validation, but with something far more powerful. A future that survives because you had the courage to end what should have never continued. That's not rebellion. That's not sabotage. That's legendary intervention. They don't always say it out loud, but when they face a hard decision now, your story shows up in their minds, not as a warning, as permission. Permission to choose courage over comfort, truth over tradition, future over fear. What you did rewired how they see strength. Strength used to mean endurance, silence, sacrifice. You proved strength can also mean refusal, walking away, ending something even when it costs you everything familiar. You didn't just change an outcome, you changed the standard. What was once tolerated now looks unacceptable. What was once normalized now feels dangerous. That shift alone altered generations. Some of them still struggle to admit you were right. Ego takes longer to heal than damage. But even in their resistance, they live inside the world your decision created. You became proof that patterns aren't destiny, that bloodlines don't override consciousness, that awareness is stronger than inheritance. There's a quiet envy underneath their admiration, because you did what they were too afraid to do when it was their turn. You faced the consequences head on so no one else would have to. They call you a legend now because legends aren't comfortable people, they're necessary disruptions. They arrive, they break something sacred but toxic, and they leave behind something livable. You didn't wait for permission from elders, peers, or fear. You trusted your discernment when no one clapped for it. That trust is what made you dangerous and unforgettable. Some nights, they still replay the moment you walked away, not because they miss you, but because that moment marked the end of their illusion that things could continue unchanged. You didn't just save future generations from pain, you saved them from confusion, from growing up thinking suffering was normal, silence was love, and endurance was virtue. That's why your name carries weight now. Not because you demanded respect, but because your absence forced reflection. You became the line in the story where everything before it is how it used to be, and everything after it is how it should be.